All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to map out our inner world to understand something I think we all feel, why we often seem to be at war with ourselves. We're going to explore a really fascinating psychological model that not only makes sense of all this inner conflict, but is also backed by some pretty incredible neuroscience. So let's get into it. You know that feeling, right, where one part of you is screaming, yes, let's do this, but then another part just slams on the brakes, totally paralyzed by fear. It's like this constant internal tug of war, and man, can it be exhausting. And look, this isn't just some abstract idea. It shows up in super real ways. It's that voice in your head that's your own worst critic. It's that procrastination that just won't let you start that big goal. It's that feeling of being completely stuck, or that anxiety when you're torn between playing it safe and taking a huge risk. These aren't just random moods. They're actually signs of a much deeper dynamic at play.
Okay, so what's the deal with this inner tug of war? Well, it turns out there's a really powerful way to understand exactly what's going on inside.
It's a framework called Internal Family Systems, or IFS for short, and it was developed by Dr. Richard C. Schwartz. And the big idea here is pretty revolutionary. Your mind isn't just one single thing. Nope. It's more like a family, a collection of different parts, which are really just patterns of our thoughts and emotions. And each of these parts has its own unique beliefs and goals, all shaped by our life experiences.
So to really get a handle on this, let's meet the key players in our inner family, shall we? We're going to start with the most vulnerable ones.
These are what we call the exiles. And a great way to think about them is like they're the younger parts of you, kind of like your inner child holding on to all that unresolved hurt from the past. And to help you just get through the day, these exiles often get tucked away, hidden, so that their pain doesn't completely overwhelm you.
But here's the thing. You can't just shove that kind of pain into a closet and hope it stays there. That's where the protective parts come into the picture. Their entire job, day in and day out, is to keep those exiles locked away and make sure their pain doesn't spill out. And they've got two very different strategies for doing it.
So you've got two kinds of bodyguards here. On one side, you've got the managers. These guys are all about being proactive, trying to control your life from the inside out to make sure those exiles never even get triggered. Think perfectionism, intense self-criticism, that kind of thing. And on the other side, you've got the firefighters. They are totally reactive. When an exile's pain does break through, they rush in to put out the fire, to numb it with things like binge eating or other impulsive distracting behaviors.
Now, this next point is huge. It's maybe the most important idea in all of IFS. There are no bad parts. Seriously, that perfectionistic manager, that impulsive firefighter, they genuinely believe they're protecting you. They have good intentions, even if the results of their actions aren't always great. They've just been forced into these really extreme roles by life circumstances.
Okay, so if we're all just a collection of these, well, kind of chaotic parts, who's actually flying the plane? Who's in charge? And that question brings us to the absolute heart of this whole system.
And that, my friends, is the self. And let's be clear, the self isn't just another part. It's your core, your true essence. It's that calm, curious, wise leader your inner family has been waiting for. The entire goal of this model is to learn how to lead your life from this core self instead of letting your panicked managers or reactive firefighters call all the shots.
And when you're connected to that self, you get access to what IFS calls the 8 C's. You know, qualities like curiosity, compassion, calmness, confidence. When you're operating from yourself, you can approach that inner critic with curiosity instead of judgment, right? Or you can feel compassion for that part of you that always procrastinates. And this isn't stuff you have to go out and find. It's already in you, just waiting underneath all the noise from your other parts.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds like a really nice metaphor, a cool psychological map, but is it real? Does any of this actually line up with what's physically happening inside our brains? Well, the answer is a big, fat yes. And this part is absolutely fascinating.
So how exactly does this inner family map onto the actual wiring in our brains? Well, it turns out neuroscientists have found two totally distinct ways we regulate our emotions. And, you guessed it, they line up almost perfectly with this model.
Okay, so strategy number 1 is called reappraisal. This is when you use your intellect, your logic, to try to change how you think about a situation. It's a top-down, super controlling strategy. Sound familiar? Yep, that's your manager part at work. But then there's strategy number 2, acceptance. This is all about being with an experience with this open, non-judgmental awareness. It's a bottom-up, compassionate approach, which is the self in action. And here's the mind-blowing part. The proof is right here in these brain scans.
fMRI studies show that these two strategies literally use different highways in your brain. Look at the top image. When people use reappraisal, that manager strategy, you see all this activity firing up in the brain's control networks, that's the blue and green. But now look at the bottom. When they use acceptance, the self's approach, you see a decrease in activity in the brain's emotional centers, shown in red and yellow. These aren't just ideas. They are two distinct ways of being, wired differently right into our brains.
So what does all this mean? The huge takeaway here is that we have a choice. We can keep trying to control and manage our feelings with our manager parts, or we can learn how to lead from that place of calm, compassionate acceptance. So, what does that actually look like in real life? Look, the goal here is not to wage war on your parts or to get rid of them. Not at all. It's about liberating them from these extreme jobs they've been forced into. It's about restoring faith in your own core self to lead the way. And by doing that, you create this internal world where all your parts, even the supercritical ones and the impulsive ones, feel safe, seen, and supported. And that leads to this incredible sense of inner peace.
When you get right down to it, this whole thing is about a massive shift in your perspective. You stop fighting with yourself and you start a conversation. It's all about changing the relationship you have with your parts, turning that inner battlefield into a collaborative and pretty harmonious family.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with one final question to just sit with. Right now, in this very moment, can you get a sense of which part of you is listening? Is it your curious self, a critical manager, or maybe a firefighter that's already looking for a distraction? You know, the first step to leading your inner world is just noticing who's holding the microphone.